Members, and welcome to the first meeting of the Black Isle and Easter Ross Area Committee. I'm Fiona being the committee clerk, and I'm just starting the meeting to appoint a chair, which is the first item on the agenda. Could I have any nominations for chair, please? Councillor Loudon.
I nominate Lindsay Johnson as chair.
Okay, thank you. And is there a seconder for that?
I will second that proposal, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Councillor McCallum.
Hi, thank you. I wasn't too sure if this was the right moment to put forward a motion to delay the choosing of a chair until all councillors are present, seeing as there are quite a few absent here today and some can't be here due to weather.
Okay, thank you. And is there anybody who would like to second that motion?
Yes, I'll second that.
Sorry, who is that? Molly.
Molly.
Yes, yeah, sorry. So Councillor Nolan is going to second that. So we've got a motion to delay, to defer the appointment of a chair. Is there any amendments to that motion? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'd like to propose an amendment for the direct negative.
Okay. And do you have a seconder for that motion?
I will second that. Thank you.
Okay, members, so I have a motion from Councillor McCallum, seconded by Councillor Nolan, to defer the appointment of the chair to the next meeting, and I have an amendment to that by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Collier, to go ahead and appoint the chair at this meeting. So I'll just run through a vote quickly. I have apologies from Sarah Atkins, she's not here, I believe. Double check that she hasn't joined. No. Councillor Collier, would you like to vote for the motion or the amendment, Councillor Collier?
Amendment from Councillor Johnson, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Loudon.
Amendment, please.
Councillor McCallum.
I'll be going with my motion, thank you.
Motion. I think Councillor Munro is not present today. Councillor Nolan.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rind.
Amendment.
Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
And Councillor Smith is not here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 motions for the votes for the amendment and 2 for the motion. So we will carry on and appoint the chair today. And I have a proposal from Councillor Loudon to appoint Councillor Johnson as chair, which was seconded by Councillor Collier. Do we have any other nominations for chair? There are none. Okay then. So congratulations, Councillor Johnson. You're now the chair, and I'll pass over the meeting to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And first of all, I would just like to welcome everybody to our brand new committee as well. And hopefully this is something that will see all 3 of our wards go from strength to strength. So thank you all for being here today. The next order of business is to appoint a vice chair. And do we have any nominations for vice chair? Molly, Councillor Nolan.
I'd like to nominate Councillor McCallum.
And is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Oh, congratulations, Councillor McCallum. You are vice chair. I was just wondering, Fiona, given the size of this new area committee, if the members were agreeable, would it be possible to appoint a second vice chair?
Gosh, I haven't come across that being done before. Is that something you'd be willing to defer until the next meeting so I can check whether that would be appropriate or not?
Absolutely, not a problem.
Okay, that would be great. I'll find out and we can look into that afterwards. Thank you.
I just thought it might be something quite good given the size of our committee to look at for the future.
Okay.
So if we can move on, Fiona, can you give us the list of apologies for absence, please?
Certainly. Would you like me to do just a quick roll call, even though we've done a vote? But
yeah,
I've got apologies from Councillor Atkin, and for attendance-wise, Councillor Collier. You're here. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Johnson, you're here. Councillor Loudon.
Present.
Councillor McCallum.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Polly Monroe, I have apologies from. Councillor Nolan.
Present.
Councillor Rind.
Present.
Councillor Ross.
Present.
And Councillor Smith is running late. Hopefully she'll arrive later. So here we are.
Lovely, thank you. And can we go over to, has anybody got any declarations of interest?
Chair, I have a few declarations of interest that have been given to me in advance. I'll read them out to start with. These all relate to item 6. And I first of all have Councillor Ross has made 3 declarations of interest. These are, she is on the project management team for the Tain and Fern Free Church. She is the director of the Seaboard Memorial Hall and a trustee for the Seaboard Polytunnel Group. And Councillor Ross has also made a transparency statement in relation to the Fern Amenities SCIO2 application, as she was asked to help them on a voluntary basis in relation to their applications. But having applied the objective test, she did not consider that she had an interest to declare in that item. I have a declaration of interest from Derek Loudon as a director of the Tain Heritage Trust, and I have a declaration of interest from Alistair Rind as chair of the Tain Initiative. So I'm going to ask if there are any other declarations of interest, and also just remind members of advice from the head of legal and governance that if they have a declaration of interest for one application or more, that they are advised to leave the meeting for the whole of item 6. Are there any further declarations of interest? Thank you.
So thank you very much for that, Fiona. If we can now move on to the police area report. Thank you for being with us, Richard. If I can hand over to you to give a bit of an outline to the report that's been submitted and circulated.
Thanks, Chair. First I'll introduce myself. I'm Richard Ross. I'm the Area Inspector for Wester Ross. And I'll present the report today on behalf of the Area Commander, who's unavailable. So I'm assuming everybody has had sight of the report in advance of the meeting. My plan, Chair, would be to run through the report and then take any questions at the end if that's suitable to yourself.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, so as you see in the introduction section, this is the report covering the period 1st of April to the 30th of November 2023. So you'll also know there's a slight change this time. Previously, reports were provided at area committee level, and there was a bespoke report prepared for each committee. Due to restructuring of our resources to maximise frontline policing, we are now producing reports at area command level. So the report that you receive is the same report that will be put to each of the committees within the North Highland command area. But I can assure you that if there's questions on a local level, that I am able to answer them and to provide you local context. In terms of the interpretation of statistics, that's a key part of what we do, analysing crime trends and ensuring that we have officers in the right places at the right time to keep communities safe. Our statistics are still slightly skewed in terms of the COVID period, which had an effect on particularly 5-year averages, and it'll take some time for that to work through. As I'm sure you'll all understand, that following COVID challenges, we are now still in cost of living challenges, which are impacting on policing, but we work with our partner agencies to protect vulnerable people within the community. As you'll see in the report when I go into, we've maintained our presence on the roads in the area, enforcing traffic legislation and investigating collisions. You will see there's been a slight increase in serious assaults, although we are still below the 5-year average. Tragically, within this period, we have had 2 murders within the command area. That is particularly unusual for our command area. One of these has happened within your local committee area in Alness. The other one was within the Caithness area. So in terms of frauds, they continue to cause us concern. We've still seen people falling victim to frauds, and we are taking a very proactive approach in relation to education and work with financial institutes. We're going to, you will see there's been a significant drop in missing person reports, and I'll cover that more later. In terms of hate crime, we see relatively low rates of hate crime within this area, and there has been a decrease on the previous year, and we continue with our work to support victims to ensure that they're confident to report crimes to us. I'll go on to talk about the serious and organised crime work we've been doing. You see there has been a lot of proactive work over the period. And finally, I'd just like to cover Police Scotland has a policy of implementing technology to improve how we go about our business, but with recent budget cuts to the police service, this is not going to take place as quick as we would like, and the budget cuts continue to impact on the policing footprint across our area. I'll move on to the local policing priorities. So these remain as road safety and road crime, antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder, acquisitive crime, protecting vulnerable people, serious and organised crime, and terrorism and public order. You see each one is then broken down in the report with a section highlighting what our intention is and what our objective in relation to each priority is. I don't intend to run over that. I will go over some of the statistics and some of the preventative work we're doing. So in terms of road safety and road crime, you will see it in a very quick summary. In terms of detections for the various crimes highlighted, we have increased detections on last year and the 5-year average against every one of the categories of crime. That's evidence of the proactive approach officers are taking. Despite the resource and challenges, we do have officers out there detecting road traffic offences and try to increase public safety on the roads. Then the report goes on to detail Operation Cedar, which is our operation in terms of road policing, which is to challenge, educate, detect and reduce. That operation is led by our road policing colleagues, but implemented by road policing and local officers. And as you'll see, the detection rates are good in the area, and they're increasing, and there is a lot of proactivity ongoing. I'll move on to antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence. As I said, unfortunately, there was 2 murders within the area, both of which have been detected and obviously reported to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service. That is unusual for our area. In terms of serious assaults, we are up slightly on last year, but we are below the 5-year average. The detection rate sits high at 90.5%. In terms of possession of drugs, we are up on last year and down on the 5-year average. You'll see the detection rate sits at 89%. That is due to items being away for analysis. Normally we set about 100% detection, but they only get detected as such once we've had them analysed and confirmed it's a controlled substance. In terms of common assault, we are up on last year and down on the 5-year average, and the detection rate remains high at 72%. In terms of assaults on emergency service workers, that is down against both measures, slightly down on last year and quite a big drop in the 5-year average. And as you'd expect for that, the detection rate is high at 98%. In terms of preventative work, we continue to have a harm prevention officer role, which is a police constable who works across agencies, basically trying to reduce the risk posed to certain members of the community by alcohol and drug misuse, particularly targeting Cuckooing and county lines activity at present. Whilst this officer is based in police headquarters, they work across the area, across the whole division, and they have carried out work in terms of the North Highland Command area throughout the year. In terms of acquisitive crime, unfortunately house breakings are up against both measures. Motor vehicle crime is also up against both. You'll know there's been a significant rise in shoplifting over the last year and against the 5-year average. We're currently working on preventative measures with retailers to try and tackle that, and also to improve detection rates of that. What I will say is that is a national picture of shoplifting rising. We're not unique in that in any way. In terms of fraud, it's actually pleasing to see that we are down on last year, although up on the 5-year averages. What we found in the COVID period, frauds rose dramatically, particularly online fraud. As criminals changed their tactic on how they were operating, frauds became a common occurrence. We put a lot of effort into proactive work, and I say we're maybe starting to see the dividends with it dropping on last year. Again, that's a national picture of frauds being a significant issue. In terms of that, we run the banking protocol within our command area. That works well, and we refresh that education with the financial institutes each year, and we regularly get reports of them of what I would call lifetime frauds taking place where customers have attended financial institutes. So that allows us to intervene and prevent the crime occurring and the member of the public sustaining a financial loss. You'll also see there's a link on there to Rural Watch. I would encourage councillors to sign up to that. It's a good way of receiving information regarding crimes in the area. I'll move on to protecting vulnerable people. As you'll see, domestic crime has risen against both the 5-year and last year to date. Sexual crimes have also risen against both measures. Hate crimes have dropped against last year, but are up on the 5-year averages. And you'll see that there's been a significant drop, over a 50% drop on missing people from this year compared to the previous year. In terms of hate crime, there's a section there that hate crime is currently, we underwent an inspection by the HMIC in relation to hate crime for N Division. Learning from this report has shown a need to ensure that the public have confidence coming to report crimes, and we're working on that with partner agencies. In terms of missing people, I covered that. There's been a big drop, which is it's pleasing to see. Missing person reports are very time consuming for police, and reduced numbers are very much welcome. We do have each care home within the area, each children's care home has a dedicated liaison officer to that home who works with the staff and also the residents to try and prevent incidents of missing people. And again, we're maybe starting to see the dividends of that approach with the reduced numbers. Moving on to serious and organised crime, in terms of production, manufacture, cultivation of drugs, you'll see we are up against both the 5-year average and the last year to date. And supply offences, we've detected a significant increase on the year to date, and an increase on the 5-year average. Again, that comes down to proactive work by officers across the area to detect offences. In terms of counter-terrorism, we don't report statistics in relation to that. We report the educational work we're doing, and there's a section in there from Lisa Campbell, our local counter-terrorism officer. I won't go over that, it's there to read. The report then ends with the crime statistics for the various groups of crime broken down into specific crimes. I'm not going to run through all of them. They're there to review, and if there's any questions, I can answer them or respond to anything after if I need further information. That's it, Chair. Open to yourselves for any questions.
Thank you so much. That was a really very detailed report. We really appreciate the work that's gone into it. I was just wondering if you can confirm just the geographical area of North Highland, just as we're all 100% clear on what that boundary encompasses.
Okay, so North Highland Command area is Caithness, Sutherland, Easter Ross and Wester Ross.
Okay, that's great.
Close by. So it's everything north of the Kessing Bridge.
Fantastic, that makes it even easier. I've got a couple of questions before I open it up to other members, just for yourself. The first question I've got is, you said obviously there was a rise in shoplifting, and obviously given the fact we have the cost of living crisis at the moment, I can imagine that's something that would be somewhat expected. You said that there was preventative measures. Can you describe slightly what those preventative measures to prevent shoplifting would be? And if it's a slightly more, is it a case that if somebody was stealing essentials, that they might be directed to another source to get those?
Okay, so a number of questions. So first part in relation to that, in terms of shoplifting and whether it's linked to the cost of living issues, possibly, yes, an element of that will be. We also see an element of shoplifting linked to serious and organised crime in terms of people trying to source things to sell to buy controlled drugs. So there will be an element of various factors that lead to shoplifting. And what I wouldn't do is pinpoint one in particular as the cause of a rise. But as I say, there can be a number of factors why people shoplift. In terms of mentioning the ongoing work, so we're currently working. There will be an information event shortly. I'm working alongside Inverness Area Command. There's two strands. One is to improve reporting mechanisms, how shops can report and gather evidence of the shoplifting to allow, so basically make it a more efficient process for the shop staff and police officers. That will encourage reporting by the shops and also allow us to gather the evidence quicker and take enforcement action. We're also working on an event that's going to take place shortly, covering North Highland and Inverness Area Command in terms of crime prevention advice to retailers. What we find is it's more the national chains that get targeted rather than the smaller retailers. So we're starting off with the national chains that operate in the area. We're looking at a number of inputs to them in terms of how to prevent shoplifting, target hardening of their premises, and action that they can take in terms of staff awareness. So that should be taking place early March, and hopefully we'll see a dividend then. In terms of your last question, in terms of people who may be stealing because of need, if we identified that, we would submit what we call a vulnerable persons form, which would then be shared with our partner agencies to provide support to them.
Fantastic, thank you. And the next question I had was that you said there'd been a drop in missing persons, and was that specifically young people in relation to the care home? And because I noticed that was something that came up in a previous police report, so would you say that's definitely an ongoing trend at the moment?
Yeah, so within our particularly your committee area, we have 3 children care home facilities, and all of them sit within my policing area. So I can speak quite clearly on that we have had a significant drop in instance of looked after children going missing over the last year, which is really pleasing to see for them, but also for the resources that it takes up. But yeah, we have had a really significant drop in reports of that.
Oh, that's really welcome. Okay, members, does anybody else have any questions for Inspector Ross regarding the report? More of a me.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the report. It was really detailed, and it was actually, I found it really fascinating to read, so I really appreciate your time in creating that. Lindsay kind of asked my first question, but my other question was under sexual crimes. I was wondering whether the likes of drink spiking and injection fell under any particular category within that, because I know it's a bit of a vague one because there's a bit of ambiguity between the legalities around it and which category it falls into. So I was just wondering if that, or if you could provide any more information on that for me.
So in terms of drink spiking, if there was instance and there was a sexual offence as a result of that drink spiking, it would be crimed within the sexual offence statistics. There isn't a specific category for spiking, but to give some reassurance, we've had no sexual crimes linked to spiking within the last year.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
And Derek, you're next.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks, Richard, for the report. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I am interested in. Breach of the peace looks to be quite a high number, and offences relating to motor vehicles. And I think speeding would maybe be the one that would sort of pick up on there. I know that's maybe a specialist team rather than the area, but if you had a comment on either of those matters.
Yeah, so in terms of you're looking at the headline statistic, breach of the peace, section 30 and section 39, and the crime statistics, Councillor, is it? Which covers a number of different types of offences. And what we say is that's quite often our bread and butter businesses, disturbances, alcohol related issues that would come under that crime statistic. And yeah, the figures are fairly consistent over the years. Slight changes, but nothing major. I say, but it is a fairly bread and butter part of our business. In relation to speeding offences in particular, I would say the majority of these are detected by road policing officers, although some are detected by local policing. But yeah, I would say that demonstrates that within your command area, how much service we receive from road policing and the proactive approach to detecting offences.
Thank you. And Alistair, you've also got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Inspector, for your report. Last week was probably quite a busy week for the police with the snow, etc. I think maybe if the Highland Council were more proactive in having their schools open to the pupils, it would have been a lot better. But you know, then you get children gathering together in various places. And
I can respond generously. Councillors, there's a few points there. I would say, first of all, I would agree with you. Last week was particularly challenging for agencies in terms of the weather and the impact that had on not just policing but across the area. In terms of whether schools should be open or not, that's an internal issue for the Highland Council. But what I will say is we very quickly convened an emergency liaison group for the whole of North Highland, which I chaired across the 3 days of the response. So there was a multi-agency response to the coordination and planning for the response to incidents across that days. And part of the discussions was in terms of schools, but that was an internal decision for the Highland Council.
Thank you so much for your time, Inspector Ross. Really appreciate it today.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If we can move on to item number 5, which is the garage rents. So we are invited to agree the rent increases for the garages in wards 6, 7 and 9. Has everybody had an opportunity to have a look at the various options? Yeah. Fiona, were you wanting to come in and discuss on this?
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for your time. Yes, I believe you've all seen the proposed rent increases for each of the areas and the impact that could have. So would you like me to share the document on screen, or?
That would be lovely, thank you.
I don't actually have permission to do that. Is that something Fiona could share for us?
I've just changed it for you now. You can share your screen now.
Thank you. Has that come through? Sorry, I'll just try again.
That's it now.
Hopefully you can see that now. Okay, so if we go over to table number 5.1, sorry, that shows us our stock numbers in each of the ward areas, and that's based on the potential income on full occupancy of all of these garages. The teams have been working really hard locally throughout the wards on ensuring the allocations are done promptly, and as a result the occupancy rates have increased. Table 5.3 does show us the occupancy rates at the time of making the report. There were still some voids there, but we will continue to be proactive in getting those allocated and occupied. Table 5.4, this shows us the rent breakdown, so the difference between what the weekly rent is for the council tenants and the weekly rent for the non-council tenants in each of the ward areas. They are slightly different, but that will be previously you've agreed different increase rates in the previous year. Okay, so the proposed rent increases are 6.5%, 7.3% or 7.95%. And in each of these, you can see the breakdown for Ward 6 and 7. So 6.5% rent increase, that would result in a 66% increase for the garages in Ward 6 and 7. And in Ward 9, it would be a 68% increase per week. That would increase the annual income to 201,444. The 7.3% increase for Ward 6 and 7, that would be 74 pence per week. Or for Ward 9, that would be 89 pence, sorry. And if we move down to 7.95% increase, Ward 6 and 7, the weekly increase would be 80 pence. And for Ward 9, it would be 83 pence per week. So there's not much between those increases. Slight differences between the wards, but the bigger increase, which is what we're hoping for, would also bolster the wider HRA budget. We will be continuing with repairs to garages and ensuring that we can re-let those and get them occupied. But we're unable to commit to any specific investment at the moment due to the situation with the budgets, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So I would like to invite the councillors from each ward to, if you've got any questions, or if you would like to go ahead and let me know what your preferences would be.
Feel free to just come in if you have an opinion on this one, I think. Molly.
Yeah, thank you for that, Fiona. Just to say, when we had this conversation last year, my view then was that we should be trying to minimise any cost increases as much as possible. But having listened to council tenants and others since then, I think you know, when we look at these, they are fairly modest increases in terms of pounds and pence, and the investment that's required to maintain these structures and the wider HRA portfolio is very important. So I'm minded to suggest B, as it seems like a sensible middle ground, and would bring in some money that is required for these services.
Thank you. Maureen, what's your thoughts?
Well, actually, I was going to go for the highest increase because they're still within £1 per week. And knowing some of the figures in the budget now, we're going to have to really pull our belts in. And also, the only other thing I would like to add to it is we should be really trying to fill these ones which are void. And there are a lot of local businesses just they're maybe only employ 2 people, or they're just a one-man business. These are premises which they could have at a modest rent, by the looks of it there, and that might help as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Marvin May, what's your thoughts?
Thank you. I'm kind of along the lines of Molly's view, in the sense that people are struggling so much financially, and it's really difficult because we need to generate enough money to maintain and to restore and to keep these buildings, but we kind of need to keep that balance. So I'm kind of inclined to go with the middle level of increase. Thank you.
No, thank you, Marvin May. I appreciate that. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we did restrict it last year. We had the lowest increase, and clearly that meant that a number of the void garages, which might have been we might have been able to bring back into use, that didn't happen. So like Maureen, I think this year I'd like to see the increase at the top level, which is less than £1, and that would allow, hopefully, more of the voids to be brought back into use. Without the extra money, the voids are simply not going to be returned to use. So because there are a lot of potential users out there, and that would generate hopefully significant income, there are 2 benefits from increasing the rent at the higher level, 7.95%, and I think if Maureen has recommended that, then I would second that proposal.
Molly, were you wanting to come back in as well?
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back in. It was just a very quick question to Fiona. Just out of interest, what were the 3 options based upon? How did you come to those figures?
As far as I'm aware, these figures were in line with the house rent increases.
My own thoughts on this is that I personally think the higher rate is possibly the way to go, and basing that on the fact that it is within such a small margin, but and it actually is still probably within a very affordable level, especially when you compare the cost. If you were to rent container storage, for instance, you're looking at maybe about £150 a week, to rent a container, which isn't even necessarily a building. I realise that there are some garages which are obviously in better condition than others, but having more money coming in is probably the only way to see improvements to the stock. So that's my thoughts on that one. Brian, did you have your hand up there briefly?
Yes, Councillor. It was just to clarify that the 3% increases, those are what's going to January Housing and Property Committee in terms of the mainstream rents. So what we've done in recent years is kind of replicate what goes to committee in terms of mainstream rent increases as proposals, and it's up to area committees in terms of if they want to take those as the options or not.
Fantastic. So do we have, so we've got a motion for the higher one from Maureen, and we've got, did we have an opinion for the middle option? Molly, were you?
I'm happy to go with the higher option. Yeah.
Okay, so is there anybody with any differences of opinion, or are we all quite happy and agreed to go with the higher option for the rents? Lovely.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So it looks like we're going for the highest of the three options. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors, for your time.
No problem. So now we're moving on to item number 6. So I realise that we've got a few declared interests. So I think goodbye for now.
And sorry to interrupt, Chair, just before they disappear, can I just ask you to keep an eye on the chat, and I'll let you know in the chat when this item is over for you to rejoin the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're being asked to consider the applications presented for funding from the Community Regeneration Fund, and that there's a balance of the funding remaining, and we're going to agree the grant within the 2023-24 allocation to deliver area priorities identified through work to develop an area-based plan. Oh, so sorry about that. So, Alison, lovely to have you with us. If I can hand over to you. Oh, Martin as well, sorry. Didn't see you there.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Yeah, we're just wanting to look at the applications for Black Isle, Easter Ross. Sorry, I've got too many committees in my head. I think we should probably pass over to Martin, who I think has got far more.
I've got the introductory spiel here, members.
Yeah,
so,
I know. No, so I've just come off another. I'm messaging somebody about something on another committee. Like, oh, sorry.
Morning, members. This report details the 16 applications that have been received in the current round. As a result of the recent merger of the committees, there are 12 from the Easter Ross area and 4 from the Black Isle area. I've assessed the Easter Ross applications, and Alison has assessed the Black Isle ones. So happy to say all 16 applications are technically eligible to support. All have had a RAG assessment, and various criteria are rated red, amber or green with an overall score assigned, and that's based on the information provided by the applicants. We just note that red or amber do not mean that the project is ineligible, but they do highlight issues that would require conditions in any funding offer, or they perhaps reflect a limited response to the questions in the application. Members, you've seen the full applications in advance of committee, and our RAG technical assessments are included in the appendices to the report, along with copies of the full applications. So in summary, your combined area budget is £536,611. The total request today is £511,220. So you therefore have sufficient funds to approve all 16 applications should you wish to do so. And that would leave you with 25,391 remaining within your budget. And just to note that because of the various funds that actually make up community regeneration funding behind the scenes, and there's stipulations around capital and revenue expenditure, that underspend would largely be made up of capital funding, 24,651, with a very small amount remaining for revenue to make up the balance of £740. So that's the position with your underspend should you be minded to approve the applications. So the report asks you to consider each application, formally decide if you wish to approve, defer or reject, and in the case of an approval, confirm the grant award and any conditions that you wish to attach to the approval. The report also asks you to agree to ring-fence the remaining balance following discussion to deliver area priorities identified through work to develop an area-based plan, subject to further applications being brought forward to future committee meetings. That essentially just serves to demonstrate that the remaining funds are committed for a purpose while allowing you a degree of flexibility as to what you actually use them for. So, Chair, unless there's any queries at this point, Alison and I will just recap each application and the key points from the assessment, and we'll seek a decision from you as to what you want to do with them. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
There's no questions. I think working through them, Alison, the first three in project order are actually yours.
Yes, they are. So the first one that comes up on your list, and apologies for the crazy length of list that you had to go through in terms of the application forms, is the Cromarty and Rosemarkie Film Society, who have made an application to improve the cinema accessibility. This primarily relates to improvements to the car park at the cinema, which is not just used by the cinema, but also it can be used out with the cinema opening times by members of the public. It seems to have got into a particularly unsafe condition, and the application is to renew the cinema car park, really, and to carry out some minor repairs or minor safety improvements within the cinema. The total project cost for this is £40,815, and for that they're looking for a grant of £35,815. In terms of scoring, it scores very well. You know, it has some match funding in place, and it seems to be a well considered application and well supported locally, which I think has been a bit of an issue for cinema users of all ages, and particularly some of the elderly groups that use the facility during the week. Do we want, I don't know quite how this works. Do we, is there?
Okay, so
in terms of, do you say, you know?
Well, I was going to say, I'm particularly very supportive of this application. I think the car park and the cinema is used by a much wider group of the public than just the users of the cinema themselves. I know that, you know, Cromarty has quite a high level of visitor numbers. I know that there's a lot of visitors that use the car park there as well, and it's definitely a community asset that's in a poor state of repair at the moment, and it'll make a huge difference locally. So I'm definitely supportive of this application. Morven, May, you've got your hand up.
Thanks. I just want to say that I'm in full support of it as well. I mean, the demographic that use this facility is really wide ranging. As you said yourself, the use of this is very diverse. So I'm very much in favour of it. I think what they're doing is fantastic.
Yeah, and from another ward, also very supportive of it. And I think there's a lot of investment went into the original build, and so we should definitely try to maintain all of it.
Support the application as well. I have been there from a different ward. I have used the car park, so I know how badly it needs that new refurbishment. So yeah, I'm happy to support. Thanks.
Lovely. Looks like we're quite unanimous.
Good. I'll move on before you change your minds. The next one is for Kilbokie Community Trust. This is part of their much wider Kilbokie Village Hub project, which you may have seen at previous, well, certainly Black Isle councillors will have seen this at previous committees over the years. This is a much wider project to develop a community facility. It's a toilet block, potting shed, and ultimately they'll have a cafe. It's very much focused on projects for people to get involved in growing and wildflowers and what have you. But this is the currently on site, they are looking at the groundworks for the potting shed and toilet block, and this is the next phase of the work to actually put the structure in place. Total project cost here is just under £149,000, and they're looking for a grant of £30,000 towards this project.
Again, this is one that I'm also supportive of. I'm aware that Kilbolkie as a village doesn't have any form of public toilet at the moment. And the green is used by a lot of volunteers, and it will be an asset to the village going forward in the future. Marvin May, what's your opinion?
Just to reiterate everything that you said, I mean, this organisation are really fantastic. They're very forward-thinking, very energetic, and I'm very excited to see their progress. I'm fully supportive of it. Thanks.
Is everyone else content? Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. The next one is Fortrose Community Hall for repairs to external walls. I think most people around the table today will know that the Highlands have a large number of village halls, probably all built post-war and all probably in a similarly precarious position, depending on which way the prevailing wind is, and especially after weather which we've just been having, they're all showing signs of tiredness and needing some repairs and maintenance works to take them forward. The Fortrose Community Hall have recently done some work to the roof at the property, but this is to do with repairs and insulation of the south and west facing walls, particularly where they're being sort of battered by wind and rain. And the hall is extremely well used. It's a well supported project locally, and total project cost is £30,216, and they have made a grant request for the full amount, although they have indicated in their application that they are looking for other funding sources if they're not successful in the full 100% of the grant allocation at this time.
Do you got any thoughts, Marvin May?
Again, I'm very much in support of this. Our halls are vital to our communities, especially in the Black Isle. And again, they're a fantastic group. I feel we're very lucky in the Black Isle to have such a wonderful group of people who are also energetic and passionate about their local area. So definitely in support of it. Thanks.
Yeah, my view on this one is, having sat in many a community council in this hall, that anything to improve its heat efficiency is very welcome. And that, yeah, it's a really well used hall, and it's one of the parts of the community that's, you know, really shines. So fully in support of this application. Have we got any other viewpoints? Content? Yeah. Fantastic.
I think I'm going to pass over to Martin for some of the following applications from Easter Ross, and I will come back in when we get to slightly further down the list.
Thanks, Alison. Members, the next one before you is from Fern Amenity Skio. They are seeking to commission a feasibility study and business plan for the possible community purchase of Fern Abbey, which has come onto the market at relatively short notice. I think there's potential here for a really good project if it can be achieved. The outcomes are obviously a little bit uncertain at this stage, but the feasibility study would be absolutely essential if the community wish to pursue this. The application is informed by a detailed quote from an experienced consultant, and it's also comparable to a relatively recent similar study on another historical building in the area. There's a number of ambers in the reflection, in the assessment, sorry, but I think that's really just a reflection of the fact that the applicants had to move at pretty short notice to take advantage of this. I don't doubt that there's potentially a very good community project in this one. Happy to take your comments.
I think a feasibility study sounds like the most ideal way forward to preserve an asset for the community and an essential before they do anything else. So, Molly, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've no doubt that with a bit more time, the community, the group behind this will be able to sort of resolve a lot of those questions. But I am mindful that, you know, Fern could do with the sort of cash injection that we're looking at here. So I'm very supportive of it.
Everyone else content? Yes. Fantastic.
Thank you. Moving on to the next one. This is from Tain and Fern Free Church, and this is for phase 1 of a 3-phased project to deliver a new church and hall as well, which would be used for a range of community activities and benefits. So this phase features the demolition of the existing old building on the site and site clearance in preparation for phase 2, which would be the build itself to wind and watertight stage. Thought it was a very well written application. There's a clear plan and obviously a competent project team behind this. The project, if it can be realised, is a very good range of social and community benefits that would come from the facility. Although it's a phased approach, there's a clear strategy in place to raise the funds required. The overall aim is to have 50% of a total of 2.2 million in place by the end of this year, and information supplied with the application shows that they're on track to achieve that, so that's really positive. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any thoughts from members? It sounds like a huge project and could have a significant impact locally when complete. I think the team behind it are obviously very brave, taking on a funding challenge like that, and I think I personally wish them every success, and I would be happy to support this application. Any other thoughts? No? Content?
Okay, thank you. The next one is from an organisation called Fox and Friends Highlands, and this is a charity that up to now has focused on provision for children and early years development. They're looking to diversify their operation into supporting adults experiencing social isolation in the area, and it's essentially to provide a range of opportunities for adults experiencing social isolation to come together and hope to overcome that particular challenge. The specifics of the funding request are for 2 project officers and a range of costs associated with venue hire, travel costs, etc. The major issue with this one is just that 50% of their match funding is not confirmed at this stage and won't be confirmed until the end of February. But as I've touched on previously, if it transpires that they don't generate that match funding, we could obviously have a conversation to see if any approved project could be scaled back or how they might operate it in a different way. Members have said previously that they're well aware of the benefits that this project delivers, so it sounds as if it does do a range of valuable work in the community.
Yeah, have members got any thoughts on this application?
I think they are doing a good job, and that has to be addressed. But if we are waiting for the match funding to be approved, can we defer the application until they get it confirmed, and then discuss about a way forward, or how would it be then?
You could defer the application if you wish to do so today. Alternatively, match funding would of course be a condition of any approval. It would be a pre-start condition for the applicants. So they could receive an offer letter, an offer from you today with that stipulated that it's obviously a pre-start condition. If the match funding is not raised, I can bring that back to you via an area business meeting or via email correspondence.
in that case, Martin, I think that would be the best way forward for this application. I don't want them to lose the funding because they're actually doing a good job in the community. So we will then wait till we see whether match funding's been approved or not. Thanks.
Molly, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm happy to agree with that. I don't really see how they can run the project without the match funding, given the staffing requirement costs. So yes, I think I'll go with what Councillor Collier suggested.
Fantastic. I would be mindful just that that money remains still earmarked for this application, and that we don't lose that, you know, that they're not going to lose out, that it's just a pause till we see what happens.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is a straightforward application from Inver Football Club. They're looking basically to upgrade Osprey Park, which is where they play their games. Works are the replacement of the perimeter fence, construction of a storage shed with toilets and hand washing facilities as well. There's no match funding in terms of cash with this application, but it's notable that through the local community and local tradespeople, there's a significant in-kind contribution to this in terms of labour and work to do the works required. The project does require to obtain planning permission. That application is in at the moment, and that would of course be a condition of any approval you were minded to make. There's good evidence of local support for the application, and yeah, happy to take any questions or comments.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic project. Again, it sounds like it's something that will be that will ensure the future of the park and the club, and the very fact that so many members of the community are coming together to do the work, I think says a lot about the value of the scheme in general. What are members' thoughts on this one?
I'm very happy to support this application. Sorry. Well, it's just bringing the whole community to get together as well to support, and they really need this, the amenities and support from us. So I am really happy to help. Thanks.
Is everybody else content? Yes. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. The next one on the list is from Tain Heritage Trust. This one is for Phase 3 works for the Tain Picture House. This is part of a wider ongoing programme of redevelopment work, and this particular aspect would see the reinstatement of the toilets in the main auditorium, purchase and installation of a lift, and the removal of a old boiler from the basement. Completion of this phase will allow the building to be opened up to the public once again, I understand. The applicants have got a good track record of working on this project, and although there's no match funding associated with this particular application, again, they do have a good track record of raising match funding for the development. There's a very good project team behind this, and we have experience of working with them previously. Happy to take any questions on that one.
They've gone this far. I'm excited for them to get through Phase 3, so absolutely support it.
It does sound like it'll have a massive impact and bring a lot of joy to a lot of people as well. So yeah, I would definitely support this application.
Thank you. And it's back to Alison now for North Keswick Village Hall.
Yeah, so another village hall on Black Isle. So a similar situation to the one at Fairntosh, that the building is old. It's needing several repairs, particularly to do with plumbing, electrics, heating. It's a much bigger project than we've got for some of the other halls, but it's really just sort of showing the scale of needing to do, I think, a full re-roofing project here, as well as some projects to do, some sorting out drainage and what have you. You'll note that it has a red rating for match funding. It's really just because the project is really quite large and there's a number of funding applications in at the moment which they don't have decisions on yet. But as Martin has mentioned for some of the previous ones, we do have a condition on any offer that this information would need to be back with us within 3 months. And if we didn't have that information, if they weren't able to satisfy that condition, it's obviously something we could bring back to you if they weren't able to go ahead, or potentially reduce the scheme to cover some of the work, but maybe not the full anticipated project. I have to say that from the application, it seems to be very well used. It's well supported locally, and although there are issues with the hall, it is, very well used during the week, despite some of the limitations that there are in terms of accessibility and basic requirements such as toilets, etc.
Marvin May.
It'll be no surprise to you that I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's really, really vital, and what they're doing is really forward thinking. We need to have accessibility in our halls for people who are disabled, for people who have hearing issues. We need to have toilet facilities. It's absolutely vital for the survival of our halls, and I completely celebrate what they're doing. I think it's really fantastic, so I'm fully supportive of it.
I would completely agree. I think the Amenities Association at North Keswick do a fantastic job of looking after this hall. Its position is right on the edge of the Firth, so obviously it does bear the brunt of the weather quite often. But it's an incredibly busy and well used and well loved hall, and definitely one of the biggest assets to the community in North Keswick. So I'd fully support this application.
Thank you. I'd say that's also quite a large hall compared with some of the others as well. So I think, in terms of the costs, which look quite high, I think it probably reflected in the scale of the building as much as anything else. So back to Martin, I think.
Thanks, Alison. Okay, the next one is from Ross Sutherland Rugby Club, and this is the final stage of a significant programme of redevelopment works at the clubhouse. They've put a large extension onto the property, and this final request is to install a new kitchen, add soundproofing measures to the venue in response to some issues and concerns that have been raised about echoing and poor sound quality in the venue. And finally, a partition to allow the clubhouse to be split into smaller venues for hire for smaller functions. Together with a new PA system. I believe the applicants have made clear in discussion with local members that this will be the last kind of application for a while. Certainly takes them over the line, and I think given the number of funding applications they've worked on, I think they'll be actually quite relieved that that's the case. The application, like previous ones from the club, it's well written. It demonstrates a good level of community support. It's clearly a valuable asset to the community. And as I say, I think this request just gets them over the finishing line. I'm happy to take any questions.
It sounds like a brilliant application. Tamala, do you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I had some questions the last time, but I've managed to get more answers, so I think I am happy to support this application, provided this is the last one from them.
Helen.
I just wanted to feed in that when Councillor Smith put in said that she would be late, having gone to help a neighbour, she also said that she supported this application.
Fantastic, thank you. Do we have any other opinions or thoughts on this application? We're all happy and content? Lovely, yep. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is from Tain Initiative Group, and this is for a development officer, and they're looking to employ this development officer to work on quite a specific remit. It's to take forward options for the development of a specific site in Tain that has been gifted to the Tain Initiative Group. For members familiar with the area, it's next to the tennis courts at the Asda Junction. The key point with this one is that the focus and remit will be very much on development options for that site. It's been agreed that given the project will only cover 1 year initially, that particular focus is beneficial rather than, I think, trying to spread the person's focus too far and too wide. There's no barriers to the project starting, subject to funding approval, and I think it's reflective of a generally recognised need for greater third sector development officer support within the area. I'm happy to take any questions.
Molly, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Martin. Is this the one where we had a conversation about it with some of the Tain councillors last time, and they indicated they weren't happy with the development officer being focused on just one thing?
That is the application, and there was a discussion around that. My recollection was that by the end of the discussion, I think there was some agreement that for the 1 year period, it was probably more effective to focus on that site, because the site itself, if it can be developed, does offer significant potential development opportunities for the community.
Yeah, thank you. That's fine. I think, you know, in the interim, another application hasn't come forward to do something with a broader remit. So in the absence of that, I'm happy for this one to go ahead.
Is everybody else content? Yes. Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. The next one is from Seaboard Memorial Hall, and this project again is quite straightforward in terms of what it's looking to deliver. It's essentially replacing village entrance signs in the area. The summary assessment that came out also included an example of the type of signage that they're looking to install. It's 3 kind of large sort of stone monolith type signs. Straightforward in terms of scope and delivery. Long-term durability, yes, there's arguably a large initial outlay, but as I say, many years of durability, and reflects the importance of tourism to the area and first impressions for these communities. The costs themselves, they're based on detailed quotes, and the development officer working on this project has experience of delivering very similar project and has assessed those quotes in a good level of detail. Thank you.
It sounds like the new signage would be like, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but really, really important in terms of identity of the seaboard villages, and also from an artistic point of view, they sound absolutely beautiful. So I would fully support the application. Have we other thoughts or opinions? Or no, everybody happy? Lovely.
Thank you. Moving on, the next one is from Eventon Community Trust, and this is for a community development project manager. The intention is to take forward a range of existing projects and develop new projects for the local community. The key thing with this project is that it would allow preparatory work to attract a longer term investment, potentially from HIE. They have indicated that, excuse me 2 seconds, members. They have indicated that they would be prepared to consider an application for longer term development funding for a minimum of 3 years when their next round opens in late summer of 2024. So I think the interim funding for this post would put the community in a very good position to have a comprehensive plan in place for that longer term HIE support, and they would be very well placed to have a good application to that as a result of this project. I'm happy to take any questions.
Have we any questions or thoughts or opinions? Everybody happy? Fantastic.
Thank you, and we're 3 to go. We're back to Fern Amenities Scale, and this one is for the refurbishment of the playing field pavilion within the village. The community have a longer term aspiration to extend and develop the playing field pavilion, which will cost in excess of £150,000. They're engaged in fundraising work for that. This is a request for phase 1 of the development, and this would see a combination of electrical and water connections, engineers' fees to inspect the existing structure, and the installation of new roof trusses. Again, there's a number of ambers within the application, but similar to their other application, I think generally it reflects the fact that they were invited to come forward to this at fairly short notice. There's clearly a good potential community project here, and I believe within the village itself there's a real kind of lack of community facilities. So if they can develop this, it lets them have a really good community asset. Happy to take any questions.
Any thoughts? Everybody happy? Brilliant. Fantastic.
Thank you. Second last one on the list today, Seaboard Community Polytunnel Group. Again, a nice straightforward application. They are looking to replace a number of tired and broken fixtures in the village, such as flower tub and benches. Looking to put a new perimeter fence around the group's polytunnel, and to purchase a water bowser and a market cart to sell produce from the polytunnel. The major outstanding issue at the time of assessment was the community asset transfer and lease. I understand that in the interim period that's now been concluded, so there's no barriers to this project progressing if you're minded to support it.
Fantastic. Any thoughts?
I would just say that the market cart in Saltburn has been really popular with the local community and really well used. So I think it's a good idea to be replicating that in the seaboard villages. So yeah, all good.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Everyone else content, yeah?
Thank you. And finally, on the list today, this application is from the Place Youth Club, and funding is for one additional senior youth worker to help cope with demand for the organisation's services, together with support for rental costs for the 2 facilities that the project operates. I thought this was a particularly strong application. As you'll see from my assessment, virtually every category was rated green. And I think in particular what came forward in this one was the really strong testimony and support for the project, not least from a number of young people who were really stressing the value that this youth club evidently offers them. I'm happy to take any questions on it, but yeah, I thought this was a very strong application. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just say I also thought it was very strong. The work that the Place do is invaluable to the Allness community. I actually think it's quite scandalous that these sorts of services aren't on a statutory footing. So I'm very keen that we support it, and if there's future opportunities to do so, we should look into those as well, because it's very, very important work.
Molly, I couldn't agree more. I just think they are an amazing group of people, and the volunteers that they have are absolutely second to none. And the work that they're doing, I just can't imagine going back to a situation without the police in the field. I just think they're just amazing. So yeah, completely, fully support this application.
Thank you, Chair. Well, that concludes all of the applications that were before you today. So we have a note of your decisions on all of those. We will go away and contact the applicants and let them know the good news and put the offer letters and conditions in place. And we will keep you updated on the position with the underspend. Thank you.
Brilliant. And can I thank both yourself, Alison and Martin, and all the people who have gone into putting these applications together. I think the sheer amount of hard work is noticeable, and I can't wait to see the effect that this will have on all of our communities. So thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
So we'll just give it a couple of seconds for those who've left the meeting to come back in. And then I believe we're moving on to item number 7, which is going to be with Ian Moncrief for the Area Roads Capital Programme. Hello Ian, thank you for joining us.
Not at all. Good morning.
So we're just waiting for a few members to come back in who left the meeting from the with declarations of interest from the previous item.
I'll let you know as soon as I see them rejoined. I think that they're all back now. Councillors Ross, Rind and Loudon, are you back in the meeting?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Lovely, thank you. I was going to say, Ian, before we start this item, I was wondering if you could pass on our gratitude to all the members of your team for the amazing work during the recent snow flurries and blizzards that we've all had across the area. I really appreciate the work that everybody put into, especially out of hours and in the middle of the night and all the rest of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for that. I'll certainly pass that on. It's I know that it means a lot to the guys in the squads. Thank you.
So let's move on to the report for the roads. If I can just hand over to you, Ian, to talk us through.
Thank you. Well, this report is the capital programme for 24-25, and the purpose of the report is to seek members' approval. So maybe starting off with finance. Unlike the last few years, we only have a baseline capital budget available, which means that it's going to be a smaller programme than we've seen recently. The budget still hasn't been allocated to Ross and Cromarty. So as in previous years, we take last year's budget and use that to develop our programme. We do have some assistance from our colleagues in the project design unit, and I have to account for their costs. Having deducted an estimate for their costs, the remainder of the budget is split up across the areas on a road network length basis. So the Black Isle and Easter Ross has 44% of the road network in Ross and Cromarty, and I've allocated 44% of the budget to this area, and that amounts to £871,000. Looking at the programme, as ever, it's a balance between strategic routes where you get more vehicle kilometres per pound that you spend on the road versus the impacts not repairing the road has on local communities. And it's always trying to find that balance. And it's never easy because everybody wants their road repaired. Fortunately, the budget isn't going to stand that. Typical treatments that we can use include surface dressing, where we first of all we would undertake some patching, and then we would spray a bitumen water emulsion onto the road before spreading stone chips and rolling them in. The emulsion breaks, and essentially what happens is it acts as a glue to stick the stone chips onto the road. That increases the skid resistance and it also seals the road, which helps prevent water ingress. Clearly, if you get water in the substructure, you end up with freeze-thaw action in the winter, which then helps to break up the road surface. We also have resurfacing, which is basically split into two. Typically, we have overlays, which we would use in rural areas. This is where we would spread fresh tar, typically about 40 to maybe 50 mil thick, on top of the existing road. And as a variation to that, we have what we call inlay, which is usually reserved for urban areas where we've got curbs or ironwork or other things that restrict us in the height of the finished road. Overlay, the road's just built up. Inlay, we have to work to the existing levels. In terms of costs, surface dressing costs between maybe £4 to £12 per square metre, depending on the amount of patching. Overlay is around £25 a square metre, and inlay comes in at roughly £35 a square metre. So clearly, the more I can do on surface dressing, the more road network I can treat for a given budget. However, as you're probably aware, some of the roads are beyond surface dressing and they need an overlay. Within the budget I've got available, the schemes that are above the red line in the committee report can be fully funded. Those below the actual red line will require additional capital. I'll go through the actual schemes which we can fully commit to. And the first is Glen Glass Road. This is a surface dressing scheme, and this scheme is worth considering. It's forming part of a strategic timber transport scheme. It's in conjunction with Novar Estate, who are contributing a substantial amount of money. HQ are also going to contribute some funding from their STTS budget, and the cost of the surface dressing is my contribution. The Strategic Timber Transport Scheme, which is administered on behalf of the Scottish Government by Forest and Land Scotland, if it's successful, may contribute with up to 60% intervention rate. So by agreeing to this scheme, we could see a total scheme package of around £150,000. The works would include passing places, bridge strengthening, and of course the proposed surface dressing. Other schemes that we're proposing to undertake, surface dressing on Scotsburn Road. Again, surface dressing outside Tain on the Fendham Road from Tain to the Fendham Junction. That ties in with the surface dressing that we undertook, I think it was 2 years ago now, and slowly we're trying to join up the dots throughout the area. Some overlay sections in Scotsburn Road, the Radery Loop Road. I can fund 1,000 metres of overlay on that section. And the tour to Belmaduffy Road, we're looking at patching that for surface dressing in future years. And lastly, down at Drumsmittle, we're looking at surface dressing that road. Again, about 1,000 metres. I won't go through all the schemes below the red line. It is early days in terms of what we're actually going to get on the budget. and I may be able to move some of these up and fund them, and that can be discussed at future ward business meetings. So that's really the capital programme for this coming year, and I would be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. That's really useful. Members, do we have questions for Ian regarding the list of roads or any of the priorities? Marvin May.
Thank you. I didn't so much have a question, but just to say that I was really pleased to see that the Rotary Road is very much high on that list, given the severity of it and the number of complaints we had. I know they'll be absolutely delighted to see it being fixed, and to just take the chance to say thank you for all the work that's been done, especially over the last few weeks. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Molly.
Thank you, and I don't envy you having to put this together. My only question really is if miraculously more funding is made available, will you take those projects below the red line in order? Are they already prioritised, or is there another way you'd look at them?
I would be happy to come back to a ward business meeting and to discuss them, and then we can perhaps progress one or two of them. I think it's like until we know how much money we have to play with, we can't really decide which scheme we can fund, which schemes can't be funded. So it's very much a question of let's wait and see, and we can discuss it at the ward business meetings.
Thank you.
Maureen, you've got your hand up.
Oops. Yes, I was more or less going to ask the same question as Molly there about the ones below the red line. But because there's the road from Rosemarkie joining the Fendham, it's an assault course now, and so I would like to highlight that. I was on the assault course the other week, and it wasn't very pleasant. But I appreciate all that you're doing, Ian. It must be just a nightmare trying to make that money go as far as it can go. I just wondered if there's any mileage in some of these big companies that maybe are starting to come in on the free port. Is there any way we can squeeze some money out, because they'll be using our roads very much so, not just the waterway but roads as well. Thank you.
I'll maybe come back to Councillor Ross with any contributions from the Freeport. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alistair, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Ian, for your report. And my concern is like the Fendham Road, the Scotsburn Road. These are all surface dressing proposals that you have, and I suppose you'll tell me that then helps to strengthen the road for the years to come. So that's maybe quite good. But the situation with a lot of the roads, as you know, is the damage that's been done over these last number of weeks, and now after that heavy snowfall that we had, a lot more damage maybe yet to be revealed. All these kind of damages will be dealt under the revenue budget, is that right?
Perhaps. When I prepare my programme, I'm very sure that I can fund everything above that red line, Councillor Rind. That means that there might be a bit of wiggle room in terms of funding. Now, if there is any spare capital, then we would be looking at discussing that at the ward business meetings as to how we go about to spend that. In addition to any spare capital that there might be, we do have a revenue budget which we can use for patching. So it's a bit of certainly one funding stream, if not two.
So I was asking Gary the other day, like the substantial damage at Polo, you know, Invergordon to Revel, substantial damage in a section there. There's also many junctions in Tain that have got damage on them. And so I thought these would be dealt with maybe in the day-to-day patching that they go around doing. Gary told me that the power plant was shut for a while, but it's maybe now opened. But will these things get attended to? Because there is many potholes right through the area that need to be attended to ASAP.
Yeah.
And the other one that members are, well, I'm sure Derek and Maureen have heard about this section at Castle Craig, which really the road is lost now. Now I see you got that underneath the red line. I don't know what could we do there temporary to make the road more passable.
Yeah, it's like there's perhaps two issues here. One is there's a limited amount of capital, although we do have a revenue budget for patching. But the other issue is that it's manpower. This is the first year where, for several years, where our capital has been reduced. So we will be able to do more patching under the revenue budget. In the past, Gary and Laura, their DLO squads were almost wholly engaged in capital works from April right the way through to maybe September, October. As that capital is reduced, we can now do maybe more patching works. So I'm hopeful that we can tackle those patching works you mentioned as soon as we can, as soon as we're out of winter.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Derek, you've got your hand up next.
Thank. Yeah, Ian. What I was wondering about is, you know, when these different planning applications go in, you know, the ones I'm thinking about were probably the Glenmorangie warehouse at Fern Airfield. And there's another active one there at the moment for the anaerobic digester. What happens in terms of transport in terms of sort of planning gain? I mean, were you asked for any input on either of those developments? Maureen's already referred to the you know, the issues at Nig on the Castle Craig Road is you know, very close to Nig. But what input are you getting to be able to attach planning conditions for these pretty big substantial developments that will have a big increase in traffic on the roads if and when they go ahead?
Yes, I'm sure you're aware, Councillor Loudon, that our transport planning team review these planning applications and then set any conditions as required. For some of the bigger schemes, such as the green energy hydrogen scheme, which is up Struwy Road, there is a part of that is a proposal to lay a water main so that they can apply an electric current from the wind turbine to the water to create hydrogen. That water main we will be asking for not just a partial reinstatement of a trench, but to overlay sections of the road where it's within the actual road structure. In terms of the Glenmorangie warehouse or the airfield, I've not heard of any of these development schemes. And as far as I'm aware, I've not been party to any decisions about seeking contributions. Where we get the big schemes, there was I think there was 2 or 3 electrical cable schemes over in the west. We asked for contributions and were kind of successful. Over in the east, we've not seen those really large developments. I've certainly not, as far as I can remember, being party to any contributions. I can go back to my colleagues in the transport planning, and to come back to you with what betterment.
I'd be really grateful if you did, Ian. You know, and clearly there's something has broken down quite badly there, because you know those roads are not built for industrial levels of traffic, and if I'm being very careful, but really, you know, there has to be greater contact between transport planners and the transport teams on the ground, if we're not to end up in a heck of a mess.
I can go back to my colleagues and report back to you, Councillor.
Thank you there. Maureen, are you... oh no, sorry, I apologise. It was Helen's got her hand up first.
This may not be an interruption that's not really needed, but I just wanted, there's obviously quite a lot of debate and discussion going on, and I just wanted to remind members that when we do get to the decision moment, we'll have to, you know, have either a clear committee decision, or if it's not, something isn't decided today, it'll either need to be delegated to officers or to come back. But we need to make sure that whatever the decision is, it, you know, fits properly within the scheme of delegation, so that we can then carry it out. Apologies if that's unnecessary.
Your contributions are never unnecessary, Helen. Thank you. Maureen, if I can go to you next.
Yeah, sorry for coming back in, but and I realise a decision on the budget needs to be made, and this should really be at another ward meeting. But is there room, perhaps moving forward, that local communities could maybe take on a little bit of the patching work, you know, the odd potholes that are within their own community? If they, for instance, we have a team in the Seaboard, and we do the street litter picking, and we do some grass cutting, and it's under a service level agreement. You know, is there any perhaps room for that moving forward? Because, you know, we could address these issues very quickly then, these potholes. But I'll leave that, and that's for another day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Super. And Marvin May, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you for letting me back in. I was just wondering, Ian, if this goes ahead today, if you had any sort of time frame for when some of these works might go ahead, and particularly the one for Radery.
Yeah, we need to get out of winter first. But the minute we're out of winter and past the 1st of April, then I'd like to get a move on as fast as possible with all these schemes. I can tell you that with Radery, we're already looking at exactly what we want to do on site. We've had an engineer out, and there'll be sections where it's a simple overlay, sections where we'll be digging out into the base course and the road base below it, because it needs strengthening. I always like to get a move on with my capital programme, because if some of my if there is any extra money available later on, I want to be in a position to have my operatives and my engineers ready to spend it. If I drag my feet, then we will be at the tail end of the year and we won't be able to spend any extra cash. So it's always I always want to get that money spent as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
So yes, I think we'll be seeing an early start in April.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
I have a question, and it's just relating to the order of the list, in that I'm assuming, and this, I know we all know what we say about assumption, that given the next couple of weeks when some of the problems of the recent cold snap may become apparent, could that change the running order of which is the priorities on the items above the red line?
Possibly, but what we have to do is we need to get the road noticing in, so that the roadworks commissioner knows what we're doing. Now we also need to order the chips for the surface dressing. So if we then decide, and the STTS scheme at Glen Glass, that needs to be submitted in, I think it's February, end of February. So there's some schemes we have to sign up to, and there's a bit of flexibility in those schemes. But what we can't really do is continuously chop and change, because the money's not going to stretch to resolving all the issues. That even the issues raised by the councillors today is not going to fix all of that. And at the heart of the decision, I've always tried to look at, in terms of value for money, in terms of motorists, vehicle kilometres per pound spent on one hand, and the impact on local residents on the other. I have, when I prepare the programme, I always make sure that my costs can more than cover the actual cost of the works, so that what you're seeing is what we can deliver, and there could well be some spare cash once we get on into that. We also have the revenue budget for patching, but we really need to have a programme that we can start working to. And I'm open to maybe perhaps tweaking it, but I don't think we can have wholesale changes. Otherwise, you're going to get start dates delayed. As I said earlier, I like to get my capital money spent early so I can be first in the queue for any extra handouts.
Okay, if I could just bring in Tamara.
Yeah, Ian, now you talk about the patching. Now we see in my ward there's over and over again roads that have been patched, but it's not lasting long. Now this is an issue, like if you take into consideration Westford, Kirkside and Firhill areas in Allness area mainly, having to go through patching jobs continuously, but it's still not a sustainable job. This is going to cost overall, I think, a much more bigger value rather than like doing a proper job. What are our options? What can we do to make it sustainable and retain a longer period? Thanks.
When you patch a pothole, it's or a reinstatement for a public utility, it's never, in my opinion, as strong as when you rip the whole road out and overlay a big section. But the budget, as I said, isn't going to stretch to that. We do have, I believe we've just finished patching at Westford and Kirkside, and that was Pat Monroe's who were working on those projects for us. It's never going to be the same, but it's that where do we spend our money? I mean, at £35 a square metre, and that's what we would be looking at for inlay work in an urban area. You're looking at say a 6 metre road, you'd be looking at over £100, more like £200 per linear metre if we were going to plane it out and then inlay that 1 metre width strip. So when you've got 100 metres, the costs just continuously ramp up, and we have to be we have to look at where the best value is and also where the road safety is. I mean, if you're looking at for instance, like a high-speed rural road, defects on that road surface may cause a bigger an increased risk of a more serious accident compared to a lower speed road in an urban area. And I understand that there's more people probably going through Kirkside or on this or the High Street or whatever in an urban area, and it becomes more important. But I can't spend money I don't have. So I mean, I'd be pleased to come back to the ward business meetings and to discuss where we want to put our patching resources.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, one thing is like that we've got some comments made from one of the engineers in the area living that saying we should have used more different methods of patching, like hot tar or so. I don't know why we are not. Is it something that we can actually look into, or is it not something that we recommend doing?
Yeah, I would always recommend permanent patching with something like our Pothole Pro, our JCB Pothole Pro, which planes out the road surface. We would then coat the vertical cut faces with an emulsion, and we would lay hot tar, and then we would then roll it in. But that can take 6-7 men. In Gary's squad, he's only got, I think it's 7 plus a foreman.
Can I was going to just wonder if we could maybe put some of the more local discussions on hold for our ward business meetings, and if it was all right with members, would it be possible to go to a decision on this? Would that be all right with everybody? Quite happy?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the question really is, are we happy to agree the area road capital programme? Is there anybody who's in disagreement with that at the moment? No. Okay, so I think the best thing to do is say that we're all content and happy to go ahead and agree the capital programme, and say thank you very much for your time again today, Ian. I really appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Super.
Bye.
Can we then move on to the 4 of our oh my goodness, the name's gone right out of my head there. Of the 4
Common good reports.
Common good. Do you know, it was right there and I was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't spit it out. So thank you, Helen. Yeah, if I can pass over to yourself, Helen, because we've got quite a few of them now to go through all together.
We rather do, don't we? Cromarty's first on the agenda. And certainly, obviously, that as Black Arm members, it will all look very familiar to you. There's one thing that applies to all of the common good reports, which is that the 22-23 accounts, they've not been individually audited. so we're obviously not able to bring you that, but all of the balances of all of the common goods went to Highland Council, and they appear as a note. So basically the auditors have confirmed there's no significant issues, but they are draft until signed. So that applies to Cromarty, but also to the others. In terms of that for Cromarty, I don't think there's anything that members won't be familiar in. There's obviously that change of income with Victoria Hall being taken out of the reallocated to the council rather than the common good, but members are familiar with that, and that obviously had that impact on the budget. And the proposed budget is basically based on this year's, on that new reduced one with the grant reduction. So unless members have got any questions, I think it should all look very familiar.
I'm quite content with the Cromarty one. Is everybody else quite happy?
Yeah, I'm happy with that one. Thank you.
Okay. Moving swiftly on then.
So I'm just move on to the Fortrose one, yeah?
Yes.
Members will see that for the 22-23 there was an anticipated surplus. And I know obviously this year that's not the case, and I should perhaps have caught Ian to check the timescale for the safety work for the Gabions, but because of that significant piece of work there will be a deficit of just under 72,000, but which would obviously be very worrying if it was likely to recur, but it is a piece of, as a result of one-off piece of work. No other significant additional costs expected in the next financial year either. So again, I think the proposed budget will look very familiar to the members covering that ward, and that would result in the surplus of just over 18,000, which is the kind of level it has been normally if there's nothing unusual going on. So again, that's all I would have to say unless there's any questions.
I don't have any questions. Mortimer, are you?
No, I don't. I think we're quite familiar with these ones, which is good. So thank you for that, Helen.
Fine. Oh, excuse me, while I press the button on my phone, which is ringing. I should have had it on silent. Done. Sorry. The next one is Invergordon, I think. And again, for the East Ross members, that will be very familiar. And nothing unexpected in the accounts or the quarterly return, or indeed for the budget for next year. But the one thing I did specifically want to draw members' attention to, members are very familiar in that ward about the need to refurbish the town hall, and we're hopeful that we would do that through community involvement. And we had a community asset transfer which had been supported but paused due to some issues within the organisation. Now I've got a verbal update on that from after I wrote the report. I have had contact from the chair of the Invergordon Naval Museum and Heritage Centre, and she has advised me that her intention is to withdraw their application. Don't have that in writing, but she was very clear on the phone, so that's just for members' information. However, I've also got a new expression of interest in, and that's from the Invergordon Development Trust. The expression of interest obviously is a relatively early stage, but I've obviously given it some thought. They've got different folk on that group, doing aspects of work towards that, to their business case. And they also have been in touch with the chair of the museum. So, it looks as if there's going to be some joined up speaking, which is always a positive. So that's really the main update for the report, that one cat has verbally been withdrawn, but it does look as if we may get another business case from an established organisation that's well sort of based and linked into the town. Happy to answer any questions.
Molly.
Thank you for that, Helen. My only question really is what sort of timescale will we be looking at for a full application to be considered after it's submitted? And in the interim, is the town hall still being used for think High Life Highland had it for a while. Is that still going on?
Yeah, High Life Highland had had the lease basically since High Life Highland was formed and took over the management of those kinds of buildings, and they do actually pay the rent. That's where the income on that fund comes from, is the rental income, and they deal with lettings, etc. So property colleagues still do basic property things as and when they arrive, and High Life Highland manage the building. And I'm not familiar off the top of my head with the level of use, but it certainly is used for some things.
Can I go then with
Yeah,
mine?
yeah, Tamara. I was just struggling to find the mic
That's all
button
right.
there.
That's okay. So, say provided what do you call the Invergordon IDT go ahead with their express of interest, do they have to submit a new program? What do you call a planning application? Yeah,
plan,
business plan. And then how much time do they have then after that?
Under the legislation for the Community Empowerment Act, the timescales are actually more on us. So once they've put in a full business case, then there's a process where we have to do we have to advertise that and seek for comments, and then once something's valid, in fact I've got that the wrong way around, once it's validated, and that means that we think we've got everything complete to go with their application, we would put it out to the public and get comments, and then when that comes back, and that's a set period of time, I can't remember off the top of my head, 42 days or something like that, then we assess that, and we would as officers then look at through the community asset transfer group we would assess that and make a recommendation. So it is quite a heavy process. It's actually quite supportive in its own way, because obviously a business case needs to be robust if it's going to work. And I am encouraged that I think there's some communication, so some of the work done to date hopefully won't be lost in terms of funding sources, because actually there was clearly some partnership working going on beforehand. But I mean, it clearly makes the timescale a little bit difficult to work out. But our other option would clearly be to go back out to advert for sales. So I think my assumption is members would be content for us to continue at the moment to give them a chance to get that application in.
That would be fair.
A business case in. So I'm optimistic that will come in reasonable time, but I don't, I obviously can't be certain.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Okay, if we're all happy with that one, are we happy to move on to the Tain Common Good Fund? Fantastic. Back to you, Helen.
Okay. Well, again, I mean, the Tain and East Ross members, I'm sure, will recognise everything that's in the report. In terms of 22-23, there was slightly higher income that year, which I think, as I recall, we got a second let and a slightly, we advertise every year for the 364 days, so the income goes up and down a little bit. There's also last year a credit, and this relates to a historic land transaction in Blairleith land, and it was a mix of common good and council land, and the common good money was not properly accounted for at that point, so it's historic, but it's been put into this year. But also during that last year we did set aside 20,000 to do some works at the golf club, and that was allocated to come out of the reserves. But obviously these two things have actually kind of offset that balances, but they're all specific individual items that members will be aware of. And of course we have had, in fact on most of the common goods, we've had higher interest on the investment income this year, so that's been a bonus. And in terms of Q3 for the current financial year, slightly lower spend than anticipated, but there's been no work associated with the mussel fishery, and we've tended to put in a budget, and I have actually recommended this for next year, just a small budget in case minor things come up, a small budget of 2,000. We haven't used that so far this year. I'm not anticipating any work, so for this year just a small surplus. And I've kind of already covered the budget for next year that we're putting forward, that does again have some mussel fishery spending. That may not occur, but it seems wise to put a little bit of provision in there. So that's all I would add to the report, and obviously the recommendations as for the others are within it.
Super, Helen. Derek, you've got your hand up.
Yes. How long have you got? It's been no. The first thing is sort of welcome a bit of extra interest income. So it's gone up from sort of 0.25% to something over 1%, which is a spectacular improvement for us, and that's certainly a trend. I'm glad to see, Helen, that in the sort of projection for next year, I think you're anticipating it to increase again, so that's very welcome. Just to let other members know who've not been involved with Easter Ross before, there are questions as to the ownership of the Blarlaith estate, which is where the industrial developments have been. That's to be investigated at a time when the Common Good Officer has time available to do it. And in the meantime, we don't have a share of the income from that. We don't know. It'll take some investigation to determine whether the Blarlaith estate is owned by the Common Good Fund or by the Highland Council. But in the meantime, Highland Council are in receipt of all the income for the estate. So just to let all the members know. In terms of the sort of future prospects of the Common Good Fund, there is an area of land that has, members will be aware, has been designated as suitable for a solar array, and that has a potential income which has been presented in Highland Council papers. I think in June and again in December, that could be as much as £1 million a year. So we want to see that development progress, and that has a potential to transform our Common Good Fund in the same way as the Bouchard on Bust can do for Invergordon. So I think probably leave it at that. But there are the mussel fishery is one possibility where that to be restored, but the other possibility off the coast is for a blue carbon scheme, which potentially could generate income for the Common Good Fund from CO2 capture as well. So we're looking at all of those things, and I thought it was fair to point that out to the other members of the new Beer Area Committee, so that they're aware of these things as they come up at future meetings. I hope that was helpful.
It's helpful for me too.
In the officer, I can't speak now, perspective, I'm obviously managing the Tain Common Good as it currently stands. And Sarah Murdoch obviously did her initial work about what was and wasn't Common Good, and as she's done in various places, and obviously come up with lots of information. She's doing some amazing work. And when this question came up, she'll obviously look at it as and when she's there is a lot of work in front of her, I have to say, and she did her first tranche of work for us, didn't she? But she looks in detail for dusty papers in all sorts of places. And in terms of, I do link increasingly with other members of officers who work in different aspects, and certainly I was in touch. We were hopeful to get some grant funding, won't be council allowed, and in terms of one of those climate projects, and unfortunately we didn't get through on that one. So that kind of stuff is obviously not led by myself, because funnily enough it's not my area of expertise, but that's where obviously the council is, the Common Good is managed by the whole council, so where these other things are applicable, then you know, that there's a resource that's often stretched but can be pulled in with extra expertise. Thank you.
Lovely. So are we all happy to note that? And grand. We are on to the last item. So I'm going to say goodbye to Tamala, who has to shoot off. And the last item is really just to note the awards from the various ward discretionary budgets. So again, it looks like a wide range of community groups from across the area have benefited, and it'll be exciting to see the impact that these awards have on our communities. So are we all happy to note those? Fantastic. And then the last bit is the minutes from previous meetings. So I'm assuming we can only approve the minutes we were there for. So
they've already been approved by the council.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. So it's just for noting, really. Super. Okay, well, that is us reached the end of the agenda. So thank you all so much for your time today, and I'd really like to thank everybody for the work that's gone into the reports. And we will see you all next time. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.